Well, guys, this is the last part in the series that we've been doing for this month that we like to call Unity Month because both of our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, were born during the month of August. And so we've been looking at some Unity concepts and some of our basic teachings. And today we're going to take a look at the concept of spiritual healing. And that's probably the main reason that the Unity movement came into existence. It was all because Myrtle Fillmore was diagnosed with TB. And Myrtle had been told all her life that illness and disease were a part of her family history and that she was just plain sickly and she had better get used to the fact that she was probably going to come down with some terrible disease. And of course, not surprisingly, she did. She bought into the family story. She had relatives who had contracted TB, and sure enough, it was just a matter of time before Myrtle came down with all the symptoms of the disease, which was a fairly common illness back in those days, back in the late 1800s, and nobody really knew how to treat it. Consider the state of the medical profession in the mid-1800s. With apologies to the MDs in our audience, but I mean, you can't call it much of a profession back then because there were no accredited medical schools. You didn't have to even graduate from a medical school. There was no licensing requirements. There was no professional oversight of any kind. There was nothing scientific about it. Back in the 1800s, when Myrtle Fillmore was a young woman, viruses, germs, bacteria, and things like that, they were just starting to be discovered over in Europe. So let's just say that the late 1800s was not a good time to get sick in America because the medical treatment was just as likely to kill you as it was to help you. So Myrtle, despite all of that, somehow managed to stay in good enough health to get on with her life. She was 32 years old when she married Charles Fillmore, which means that she had her 3 children when she was in her late 30s during the 1880s. Now, that was a pretty risky proposition back in those days, and sure enough, it all took a toll on her health, and the TB symptoms and the other problems that she managed to overcome for a time, well, they came back with a vengeance. And the doctors, once again, were telling her that she probably wasn't going to live much past her 41st birthday. So, since medical science, such as it was, didn't offer her any hope, she began to study spiritual healing. She started with Christian Science, and then eventually she moved on to develop and to work with her own understanding of the healing process. And this is an excerpt from a letter that she wrote to a friend on the subject after she began her journey. She said, "It was such a wonderful time for me when I awakened to the truth that God is my Father and that I inherit from Him only that which is good. It seemed to loosen all the binding thoughts of the race belief in inherited weakness, and I breathed so freely and joyously." Now, she's a product of the 1800s. You see all the masculine pronouns and things there, but that was the background. That's the way people talked back then. Waking up. That's the way she described it. When I awakened to the truth. Waking up is such a wonderful thing because a lot of the time we go through life sound asleep. We buy into whatever someone tells us without really stopping to evaluate it for ourselves and ask a very, very important question. Is it true? Myrtle had been told that sickness ran in the family and that she was just a sickly member of a sickly family, born with the family curse or something like that. And then she said, as she woke up, she said, "Wait a minute. Don't I have any say in this?" Then she did something unique. Most people in those days who studied spiritual healing methods would go to someone that they called a practitioner for what they called mind treatments. Myrtle decided to do it for herself. So over a long period of time of practicing prayer and meditation and her own personal style of affirmations, she came to a realization. What she realized was that she had been looking at her faults. She had been focusing on what was wrong with her. So she decided to turn that whole thing around, and instead, she decided to look at her virtues. She decided to look at what was right about herself. Now, this is something that we practice here at Unity of Auburn all the time. In the current nomenclature, it's called appreciative inquiry. We look at our strengths. We focus on what works, because whatever it is that you focus on grows. That's the way it works. So, Myrtle was actually practicing appreciative inquiry. She applied it to her body, and that's how she got started on this healing journey. And this is how she describes that process in her own words. She said, "God revealed to me that my body was intelligent, that I could direct and praise it, and it would respond. I told the life in my liver that it was not torpid or inert." Don't you just love those words that they used back then? It was not torpid or inert, but full of vigor and energy. I told the life in my stomach that it was not weak or inefficient and diseased. I told my limbs that they were active and strong. I told my eyes that they did not see of themselves, but that they expressed the sight of spirit. I went to all the life centers of my body and spoke words of truth to them, words of strength and power. I asked their forgiveness for the foolish and ignorant course that I had pursued in the past, when I condemned them and called them weak and inefficient and diseased. I did not become discouraged at their being slow to wake up, but I kept right on, both silently and aloud, declaring the words of truth until the organs responded. And respond they did. She was free of TB. And that part about being slow to wake up is really important here. She had to be patient. It didn't happen all at once in a blinding flash of light, but gradually her body responded until she began to feel herself to be strong and healthy. And remember now, they weren't expecting her to live past age 41. And she did quite a bit better than that. She was 86 years old when she died. She never retired. She went to work every day in the office at Unity Village and worked with the staff there. Now, Myrtle never thought that she had any kind of special power. She never thought that she had any kind of healing power. She believed that anyone could do the same thing that she had done if they were willing to learn and to change the way that they had been conditioned to think about themselves and think about the world around them. That was the key to it all. You might call this Myrtle Fillmore's do-it-yourself healing method. Once she was confident that she understood the principles, she started teaching others what she had learned, which makes sense because she had been a teacher all her life. That was her profession. Myrtle wasn't a healer. She taught people how to heal themselves just like she had. You might have noticed in Unity that we don't use words like healers or practitioners or things like that. The Fillmores were very clear about that. This is another something else that Myrtle wrote in one of her letters. She said, "It isn't individuals at Unity who quicken and heal. It is the stirring in us of the same Spirit of Christ that was in Jesus Christ. The Spirit of God standing forth in individual consciousness and expression, stirring up in our mind of divine ideas from the mind of being." That's how she describes it. And this is where we begin to see how the Fillmores look to the life and teachings of Jesus as the great example rather than the great exception. There's a book out there I think some of you are familiar with. In fact, I think you've been working with it in your Sunday morning classes, called Discover the Power Within You by Unity minister Eric Butterworth. He has a whole chapter in that book that's entitled Jesus' Formula for Healing. If you're familiar with the Gospels, you know they're filled with stories about healings. And for a long time, those stories were classified as miracles. They were classified as miracles in order to support this man-made idea that Jesus was this supernatural being come to earth and was nothing like us. We know that, of course, only a supernatural being could have possibly done the things that Jesus did, right? That was the idea that they were trying to get across at one time. The rest of us should just forget about it. Jesus is God and we're not. And in Unity, we like to say that we politely disagree. Along comes a heretic like Eric Butterworth and others who will tell us that these events were not miracles. They weren't supernatural. There was nothing supernatural about what Jesus was doing. Here's how Eric puts it. He says, if a healing is accomplished, whether by Jesus or by a medical practitioner, it is a demonstration of the remarkable wholeness of life. Exceptional as the case may be, it cannot be called a miracle. It may have dealt with the healing law on a higher level than we have heretofore known, but no laws have been transgressed. Health and healing, natural processes, not supernatural processes. Health is manifest when everything is in balance. And Eric says that, whether the healing is due to spiritual, medical, or surgical intervention, the same natural principle is at work. The life principle is acting to bring things back into equilibrium. Something else he says here, and this is rather clever, whether the life principle's energy is activated by meditation or medication makes no difference. It makes no difference. Very clever. Very memorable. Now, notice that Eric isn't saying here that meditation and medication are interchangeable, that one is as good as the other for every situation. For example, if I have a ruptured appendix, if I have a compound fracture, please don't send me a meditation teacher. I want a surgeon. I want my antibiotics. I want my painkillers. Then I'll start meditating to help with the recovery effort. We need both approaches. We need approaches that address mind. We need approaches that address the body, which is exactly what the Fillmores believed. Even while Myrtle was teaching people how to make changes in their thought process at the level of mind, at the level of consciousness, her interest in healing extended to the body as well. In fact, one of her criticisms of spiritual healers was that they tended to neglect the body. She said that one who does not understand that the body requires care day by day often fails to do that which is truly best for the body. It is a common error among us that we do not exercise, rest, work, eat, and drink as we should. So the message is meditate and eat your veggies. It's the same thing scientists are telling us today. Now, when we look at it this way, we can see that there is a perfectly reasonable and scientific basis for what happened to Myrtle Fillmore. You know, every year now, there are more and more peer-reviewed papers appearing in reputable medical journals by people with solid credentials who are telling us there is a link between stress and our immune system. When our lives get out of balance and stress takes over, the immune system can be disrupted in a number of different ways, which can lead to different kinds of illnesses, things that are related to inflammation, autoimmune disorders, infections, mood disorders, and things like that. So, anything we can do to reduce the stress in our lives is going to help to restore the natural balance, which is where the brain and the immune system are back in sync. Anything we can do to manage stress is good for our health. In fact, when you think about it, That's exactly what Myrtle Fillmore was doing when she beat tuberculosis. She boosted her immune system. Instead of obsessing over what was wrong with her and getting all stressed out with her body, accusing it of betraying her and letting her down and things like that, she went through a meditative process of seeing her body working perfectly and manifesting wholeness and health as its natural state. That's a major stress reducer. And I know a lot of people say, okay, that's easier said than done, right? Because let's face it, we all want the quick fix. And when it doesn't happen, what do we get? More stress and more anxiety. So the paradox here is that we can become obsessive about stress reduction. Got to be careful. We forget about how for Myrtle it was a gradual process that required patience. It required gentleness. Maybe what we really need to learn how to do is to just take it easy. There's an old saying, when life hands you lemons, what do?
Make lemonade.
You get busy and you make some lemonade out of that. By golly, hurry up with those lemons, get a move on, make that lemonade. I got a better one for you. When life hands you lemons, tell life to take a hike. Tell life, I got this. I'm just going to go out and get whatever it was that I really wanted in the first. You can keep your lemons. I'm going to go get what I really wanted. When's the last time you just took a day off and did nothing of any substance? Seriously. Sit around, surf the web all day, watch cartoons, watch music videos, do anything except what you think you should be doing. As a duly ordained Unity minister, I give you, this is my only power, I give you dispensation to be irresponsible for at least one day a week. How's that sound? Do anything except what you think you should be doing. We live in a culture, isn't this true? We live in a culture that seems to want us to be in a constant state of freaking out and being outraged about something. You name it, it's out there. So take a day off and politely tell our culture to take a flying leap. Go away. Go bother someone else. We're not interested in what you're selling. Start the day with a donut or a cinnamon roll. Make sure there's some ice cream involved along the way during the course of the day, because life is too short to be obsessed and stressed out about anything. So remember what this guy has to say. I want you to take her easy. I really think that's the foundation of all spiritual healing. And Myrtle Fillmore's life is a demonstration of that principle. So give it a try. I mean, what do we have to lose, right? Give it a try. What do we have to lose except for a lot of stress and anxiety? And think of what we have to gain. See you in September.